Hi everyone, thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here and share a couple of these things that I did. So I wanted to start with SIDELINE, the space to rethink togetherness, and then give two examples of works that I am really proud of that are in the Stedelijk Museum. It was really interesting because when I got the assignment or the appointment to be the curator of the Venice Biennale of the Dutch Pavilion of Architecture, together with social designer Gabriel Fontana, we were a bit surprised because we're both not architects. Gabriel Fontana, he is graduated from the Design Academy in Eindhoven, and I'm an art historian, curator. But I actually think this is the fact that afforded us to also think a bit more freely about what architecture is. And we really see it as a system that regulates our spaces, bodies, and behaviors. So when we got this assignment, the first question that we had is, how do you design spaces where everyone feels welcome and seen? Because that's, of course, not the case in a lot of different spaces. Sometimes people can't even enter them, or they feel that there is a threshold. So we started with this question, and we started with the practice of Gabriel Fontana. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work, but after this talk you will be. So what he does, he actually looks at society through the lens of sports. And you maybe think why, but actually if you think about it, you can really see how sports mirror society, but also the other way around, in which sport is very universal. It brings people together. It can create a space for belonging, but it can also be very exclusive. It can pull people apart. If you talk about different sports teams, for example. And it's always a sort of us versus them, and different teams playing against each other. So what Gabriel does, he designs alternative team sports that really sort of try to break the norm at how we look at society. And with that idea of this lens of sports, we started to look at architecture, at all these different forms of architecture in sports, from the really big stadium and arena to the gyms to the very intimate locker rooms. But then we ended up at the sports bar, because the sports bar is this place where people come, they watch sports. It's a place, again, where people come together, where they cheer together for one team. But it's also a place where Gabriel and I would never come, because we wouldn't feel that we would belong there or that we could actually enter the space. Because in our heads, these sports bars were super masculine, testosterone, and yeah, just not really a place where we would feel welcome. So we thought, how could we change this idea of this space through the lens of Gabriel and use queering methodologies? So instead of looking at a very binary way at society, in an us versus them, in the idea of genders and identity, so we're using the methodology of queerness and queering not as only a sexual orientation, but really the idea of deviating from the norm. So that's why we also, actually this quite inspired us. It's a very sporty image, but then I want to start with the alternative team sports that Gabriel designed. So this, I will go to the sports bar. I will show you also photos, of course, of how the Dutch Pavilion looks like now. But we're showing three different team sports that he created. And this is the first one. It's called Multiform, and he also graduated with this project. And Multiform is played on a six-sided field, which is inspired by the situationist artist Oscar Jon. And so there are three teams. We have the white team, the light blue one, and the dark blue one. And it's actually all about these uniforms, because you start with the team. You know what team you are, and every team has the same amount of players. But at every time when the referee whistles, you have to change something in your uniform. And all of a sudden, you're the dark blue team instead of the white team. All of a sudden, you belong to a different team. And then you have to have a whole new strategy and new players that you're with. The other sports that we showed is called fluid field, and this is not played on a six-sided field, but on a field that is constantly changing. So it's projected from above, and this is in W139 in Amsterdam. Here you see that the field is round, but at one point it became a rectangular. One point from 2 goals it became only 1 goal. The goals just disappeared. So then you have to constantly rethink what your body does and who to pass the ball to and how. But one of my favorite, and it's maybe because we played it in Venice, is Anonymous Allyship, which is again played by 3 teams on this really big 6-sided field. And it's called Anonymous Allyship because only you know in what team you are. So you have no idea who your teammates are. So you just run on the field, you know in what 2 goals you can score and what goal you have to defend. But who is your team? You don't know. Only through playing you understand it, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, this person is trying to score in my goal. Ah, that person is also defending my goal. And this is how you create bonds. Because of course the idea of belonging can be very abstract. And this is the idea of how we can embody that feeling. But maybe it's good to actually watch a little bit as well, so you get the feeling of how it is. So as you can see, there's the 3 teams, but all the shirts are similar.
So here, goal 1. Okay? Okay. Okay.
Tutti sì, tutti no, com'è?
I love it.
Yes. One more.
Non è ancora. Palla, prova palla.
Aiuto!
Stop.
We can go back to the slides. So as you can see, it was all minus goals because you have no idea actually what team scored, if it was team 1 or team 2 or, you know, in the 3rd goal. So if you're minus the most, then you lose. So for the people that have been in Venice and maybe recognize the stadium, because when you take the Vaporetto, you go around it. For us, it was really important to film it there, because you know, Venice is quite a special locality, and the Biennale comes in sort of as locusts, takes, and then leaves again. And for us, it was important to really connect with people there. So we played. So as you saw, we played with a lot of different people. We had the nonnas, the older ladies from the sewing group. We had people from the queer community. We had students from the sports university. And what was also very special, we had players from the women's team of the Football Club of Venice that are actually not allowed to play in the stadium. So this is only for the men football team. And we were like, no. We're not doing that. We're gonna break these rules, because that's what we did with this pavilion. So for us, it was important. And now I'll bring you to the sports bar. So how do you then create that idea of queering a sports bar? So of course, as you can see, we had the Jumbotron. So that's where we have all the videos of the sports games that Gabriel designed, but the whole design of the place itself is done by Jeanette Sluter and Koos Breen. They're amazing scenographers, and so we transformed the Dutch pavilion also in a hexagon, so also in 6 sides to mimic the field. But for us, it was really important that everyone could come in. So as you can see, the bars that we have different shapes. They're soft, so they also feel very good. They are different heights, and we were also very inspired by the same height party of Hans Hemrich. So we had all these different stools, bar stools. So some were love seats, some were larger, some were smaller. And I told you about fluid field, where the field constantly changes. For us, it was also important for people, for visitors to come in, to also feel what it is to play one of Gabriel's games. So we designed this foosball table that is also fluid, and only there's only on one side is where you can play. So you're basically one team, all the same. You're all purple, but different heights, different bodies, so to say. And in the back on the screen, you can also see a video that Alice Wong made. It's called Beyond the Game. And what she did is chose a lot of different historic, but also newer fragments of protests in sports to show that protests were always, or sports was always used as protests. So maybe starting with Nelson Mandela, who tries to overcome apartheid through sports, Kaepernick kneeling for Black Lives Matter, but also the drag queens that were opening the Olympic Games, and then Andrew Tate protesting against that again. So that's what we showed, and for us it was also important that everyone could come in. So on the side we had a better ramp for people that are using wheelchairs, and we had a floor plan and an audio tour for people with a sight impairment. And what was also interesting, but you can't see that here, we had a soundscape. So when you came in, you would hear this sound, and the soundscape is made by Luca Soudan, and they recorded this applause and this cheering during the Trans Pride Berlin, and they really see applause as a sort of collective way of taking in spaces again in our cities. And it was slowed down to this beat that it was almost a collective heartbeat, so it was also very symbolic. But of course, we also had trophies that really reflected our new ideals that we had, so the earliest ally, but also the rule bender. And we made a newspaper that you see here on the right, because of course we couldn't do this alone, so we already with a lot of different designers, but we also had to learn from people. So we interviewed in Rotterdam the founder of the Queer Gym, but also 2 people of a sports bar in Rotterdam, and we saw how these spaces of belonging are similar and sometimes different, but we also went to Club Neuro Verde, which is the club in Venice, and we interviewed people there. And we also asked architects to write essays. And if you're interested, these are published on the website of the New Institute. And I don't know how much time I have still. Okay. So this sort of thinking about designing togetherness, designing new spaces, it's also reflected in at the Stedelijk Museum, where I'm a curator, so I make exhibitions, but I also take care of the collection, of a part of the collection. I can do acquisitions, collection presentations, and here I actually really try to share my platform with people that use design to, also like Gabriel, really speak against the norms and make place for marginalized voices. And Sara Zapata is one of those makers. She is someone who explores textiles as a means for, maybe embracing her different identities and the intersectionality of her identities and bringing in her different cultures. She's Peruvian American and was raised in an evangelical community, but as a queer person. So she always felt a lot of guilt. But she's working through that through the use of textile and really subverts the idea that textile is also always only a women's work and done at home. And the other work that I'm also really proud of have acquired is this work called Lucas Second by Dae Kim. And Dae Kim is a designer who came to the Netherlands also to study at the Design Academy in Eindhoven. And in the Netherlands he felt more freedom to be himself, to express his identity and sexual orientation. And he became sort of very interested in the phenomenon of fascination, which is when flowers in nature mutate because they are damaged. And we as humans, we find that very beautiful when a flower mutates and becomes something else. But we find that biological differences in people, we don't find that so beautiful. And Dae Kim questions that, like, why is that? So he made this sculpture. And it's called Lucas because it's actually a friend of his. It's also 188 centimeters. And he has the same piercing, the same body hair. And actually it's for Dae Kim a promotion for people to really embrace human diversity. And I think with that, I can leave it. Thank you so much.